and welcome to Return to Regalia, an Underland Chronicles reread podcast. I'm Una,
I'm Audie.
and today we'll be covering chapters 17 and 18 of The Marks of Secret, in which the questers have a sort of picnic with some scorpions. What did you think of these chapters, Audie?
I mean, as a linguistics student, it's so much fun.
Right?
Yeah, just the switch in the approach to the conflict and the multilingual conversation that happens is just so cool. And there's kind of being like the catalyst of it. It's just so awesome.
Yeah. I didn't know that you were also a linguist.
I am, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, love linguistics. Love how the theme of language gets explored really in depth in these two chapters.
Yeah, totally.
Where we left off, the rats who were listening to the Bane's speech chased the group into the Scorpion's cave. So, chapter 17 begins with a description of the scorpions and their stingers, which Gregor figures could probably kill any of them in a single strike. The bats focus on dodging the deadly tails, and Gregor struggles to draw his sword while holding Boots, who is leaning over trying to look at the scorpions. He convinces her to hang on to him like a monkey and says he's going to let go of her so he can fight. She must remember what happened with the flood earlier in the book because she hangs on tight, which I always loved, that Gregor had to be like, hang on to me like a monkey.
She had. And also the fact that she remembers that traumatic experience in the flood, and then she has a chokehold on him basically.
Right?
Oh, poor little baby already has so much trauma.
Right. Luxa retrieves another flashlight from Gregor's backpack, and Howard says they should try to cut off the scorpions' tails. Gregor tries to go into attack mode, but with Aurora trying to dodge the stingers and Boots squeezing the air out of him, he can't do any damage. The others aren't doing any better because Howard is still trying to restrain Cartesian, and Luxa is riding backward on Aurora. Oblivious to the danger, Boots is delighted by what she identifies as baby spiders. At first, Gregor thinks she must see an even bigger scorpion somewhere, but then Boots points out a dozen smaller scorpions on one of the big one's backs. Boots announces that she's going to sing to the babies, and at first Gregor thinks this is a good way to keep her occupied, but then she starts singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider, and she lets go of him to do the hand motions. Aurora rolls to avoid a stinger, and Boots falls off.
I love the absolute lack of fear that Boots has regarding the scorpions, and just how consistently unafraid she is of any of the, typical creepy crawlies. It's such a cute little kid thing, and it's so consistent. And then even in this moment where they're very clearly being attacked, and I feel like she's been in enough high-risk scenarios by now to, a lot of the times when there's danger, even if she doesn't understand what's going on, she'll still, cry or be upset. But here she's just oh, the babies, there are no babies on my back. I'm going to sing them a song. And it's she's gone through so much, but she still is just a child with such an optimistic and happy outlook.
Right? Yeah, she brings so much joy to these books. I really can't imagine what this story would be like without her. And yeah, I do love how she's just a little bit ago, she's remembering what happened during the flood, so she wants to hang on tight to Gregor, but then as soon as it's oh, I have a job now, I have to sing to the babies, she forgets about that and just lets go of him.
She's very good at taking care of babies, which is funny because she's basically a baby, but
right,
even, with the mouse babies and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, love how she's always trying to take care of people, sing them to sleep. She takes her job very seriously.
She does. It's so sweet.
Ares dives to catch her, but doing so causes Talia and Temp to fall off his back. The mother scorpion immediately pins Talia with her pincers, ready to deliver a fatal sting. In a panic, Hazard leaps from Aurora's back and puts himself between Talia and the scorpion's stinger. Luxa jumps down, prepared to attack, but after hearing the scorpion hiss, Hazard stops her. He begins speaking to the scorpion in Hisser, which makes her hesitate. Hazard tells everyone to put their swords away and continues trying to communicate with the scorpion. The others land, and Gregor suggests Hazard try talking to it in Spider, which I always thought was very smart because Gregor figures that because they both have 8 legs, maybe they're similar, which is true because they're both arachnids, even though he doesn't know that. He is kind of like, well, they both have 8 legs, maybe they talk the same.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that Boots mistakes them for spiders. Like, she probably doesn't know the word for a scorpion, but I don't know. I feel like if I saw a scorpion, my first thought wouldn't be to call it a spider, but maybe she was also looking at the legs.
Right, right. Yeah, she must have been like, oh, 8 legs? That's a spider.
Counting them like, 1, 2, 3?
Yes.
I also just love the absolute chaos of this battle where none of them can land a hit on these scorpions. And I just imagine them all just frantically like flying through this very small cave and waving their swords around, just getting absolutely nowhere.
Right? Yeah. It must be chaotic. And yeah. I really like the description that Gregor gives of like, Howard is trying to keep Cartesian on the bat, Luxa is trying to keep Hazard on the bat, no one is doing any damage. Yeah, just Gregor trying to go into attack mode, and I think something in the narration is like, that was out of the question, or whatever.
Yeah, but like, battle logistics get so chaotic in this book. Like, who's on which bat? And
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this book is extremely... It becomes very relevant to the plot of, like, who is on which bat, because there's a limited number of spaces, and it causes, like, some conflict about who's gonna sit with who, and who's gonna carry Rip Red later when we get Rip Red in the mix.
Right, and
yeah, so it's really interesting just how they all deal with that. Hazard drums on his chest to make vibrations, which just confuses the scorpion. Howard tells Temp to try speaking in Crawler, and Boots excitedly joins in with her own clicking noises. The narration says, a stream of clicking intermingled with English poured out of her mouth. It was so frenetic, Hazard and Temp left off and let her go. Boots rattled on for about a minute, gesturing to the babies and singing little bits of Itsy Bitsy Spider, and click, click, clicking away. And then suddenly she stopped, her hands clasped together, her chin forward, as if she was eagerly expecting an answer. Which is just so adorable.
So cute. I so badly want a translation of what she said to these scorpions. This is also one of those scenes where I don't have full faith that it would be done well, but like if there were to be an adaptation of these series into either a TV show or a movie, I would just love to see how they go about this scene. I would love to hear this frenetic clicking that comes out of Boots' mouth.
Yeah, me too. Just because, like, she's learning Crawler, but she doesn't really... She's not, like, fluent yet, and she doesn't really know kind of the difference. So she's just, like, mixing all of what she knows together, and I love that. And it just is really funny how she gets going, and Hazard and Temp just, like, give up trying to communicate with the scorpions, because Boots just, like, is going for it.
Yeah.
After a long pause, one of the scorpions replies with a few clicks. Everyone lands, and Hazard ascertains that both scorpions know a little hisser, and the big one knows Crawler. After asking the mother scorpion to free Talia, they explain how the rats chased them here. The scorpions reveal that they too are enemies of the rats. They also confirm that the nibblers passed through recently and are in terrible condition, with many sick or injured. Boots, no longer able to contain herself, clicks and sings at the mother scorpion. Hazard explains that she wants to pet the babies. This is another cute part when Boots is like, she's waiting for everyone to, finish talking, and then she kind of bursts out with like, hey, I have something to say. I have an urgent question. Can I pet the babies?
Yeah, I love how Gregor's response is like, what? No, Boots, they're scorpions. But then immediately it's like, no, actually, and she can't pet the babies.
Exactly. I love this part in the narration when he says, they're scorpions, Boots, you don't pet them. And then it says, but he was wrong again. A few minutes later, after some negotiation and assurances that they were too little to sing, Boots was sitting on the mother scorpion's back, cooing to the babies as she patted their shells, which is just excellent. Like, if we're making, like an adaptation about this, I just love the idea of Gregor being like, they're scorpions, Boots, you don't pet them. And then they just like hard cut to Boots sitting on the mother scorpion's back.
Yes. Oh my God. I could see it so clearly. I also love that she sits on the mother's back. Because I feel
Right.
like it's sort of an unnecessary part, but I guess the mom of Scorpion's just like, yeah, no, climb on up, pet my children.
Yeah, I love that. Hazard, Howard, and Temp keep conversing with the Scorpions, and Luxa gets out their last picnic cake as a peace offering. Luxa reflects on what Hamnet told them in the jungle about how many creatures don't want to fight, and Gregor agrees, saying it's a good thing they were all so useless in the fight.
I think The Mark's a Secret, it has become my favorite book in the series. Uh,
Yes!
yeah, it was Curse of the Warbloods for a very, very long time, but it has recently been overtaken by this book. But there will always be such a special place in my heart for Curse of the Warbloods because of how much of these later books it sets up, like thematically, and just how pivotal and crucial of a character Hamnet was, and how his mark was left on the rest of the series, even though he's not alive within it anymore. It's just so good. Every time they reference Hamnet, I'm like, oh yes, yes.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just like Curse of the Warmbloods really does set up so much, especially with Hamnet just like, he gives a lot of advice throughout Curse of the Warmbloods, and then Gregor and Luxa kind of come back to that advice over the course of the next two books. And it's great every time. And I love that Luxa and Gregor have this little moment here of like, Hamnet was right.
Yeah, especially because Luxa didn't get much of a chance to really interact with Hamnet when he was alive, and when she did, they were butting heads a little bit, and she was kind of like trying to figure out where she stood. But now, like, even though he's dead, he's still living on and continues to live up through her leadership, and it's just so good.
Right? Yeah. The Scorpions agree to let the group rest here, and they share a meal together. Boots even tries feeding the babies, but it doesn't really work because they have to liquefy their food first, same as the spiders. When Howard asks if the Scorpions have always lived here, Hazard confirms and says, usually it is very peaceful, no one bothers them, but of late the whole Underland comes to their doorstep. Shiners, nibblers, gnars, crawlers, flyers, and even killers. Gregor notes the shock on Howard and Luxa's faces and asks who the killers are, assuming they're some other kind of creature he hasn't heard of. But the chapter ends with Hazard saying, oh no, Gregor, it's us. We humans are the killers. Which is just so good
Yeah,
every time.
it's such a good and important moment, but also all I can think of is cue Mr. Brightside.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's like, this is such a pivotal moment. Like, we had a lot of this in Curse of the Warmbloods when Gregor was kind of coming to the realization that the humans aren't the good guys, and especially at the end of Curse of the Warmbloods when we get the reveal about Solovet starting the plague, it's like very clear, like, oh yeah, the humans can be the bad guys sometimes, but then this is just another like turning point where it becomes clear just how much of like the rest of the Underland thinks that the humans are the bad guys. It's very eye-opening.
Yeah, totally. I just also the way that Hazard says it so casually, because to him it's just a fact. He doesn't know the connotation. I mean, I guess he understands what it implies, but doesn't see anything wrong with just saying what it is, because he's not trying to like quell his own ego or anything, I guess. He's just like, yeah, no, the humans are the killers, and that makes sense.
Right, right. That's just a fact for him because that's been part of his language and the languages that he's been learning, and it's just like common knowledge to him. I love just everything in this chapter. We're going to get into more in the next one obviously, but like setting up how important the theme of language is and the fact that Boots and Hazard and Temp can speak to the Scorpions, and that totally changes the outcome of this situation.
Yeah, it's so good. It's such a great moment. It's so central to everything thematically.
Yeah. And of course, Boots is such a pillar of joy and like innocence because she's trying to befriend even the most dangerous creatures, and that is totally in contrast with the instincts of the older characters to like come in with their swords swinging first.
Yeah. And also made me think of, I think you talked about this in the last episode about how, like, you can't go to a rat and just expect it to be nice to you, like how they teach the humans to be scared of the rats from day one, and like how there's truth to that, but then also nothing will change if they don't try to do something different, and how I don't, in this moment, they're kind of forced to do something different because fighting just isn't working. And it sort of adds like conflict to that question of like, well, how do you make change if you're putting your life at risk to do so? And it's like, well, I don't know, just going back to the whole Hamlet's whole ideology, like most creatures don't actually want to fight. And so you kind of just have to put trust in them. And Boots as this child is just like trusts pretty much everyone.
Right, exactly. So chapter 18 starts with Gregor asking for clarification about Hazard calling the humans killers. Hazard reminds us that animals in the Underland are named for what they do. Rats are gnawers, bats are flyers, etc. So naturally, humans are known as killers. I love this reveal, like I always have. Even as a kid reading these, it was always so shocking to kind of realize like, oh yeah, we haven't heard the humans like other name before. Like we're completely aware of this, like everything in the Underland has two names, like rats and gnawers and bats and flyers, but we haven't ever considered the fact that the humans could have a different name. They're just always referred to as humans. But then Hazard reveals this and it makes like perfect sense that the humans do have a name. We just like haven't heard it yet.
Yeah, exactly. It almost like with this reveal happens, it's like, oh my God, why did I not consider this before? Like, of course the humans have a name, they're not special. And then of course their name is the killers because they're not above anyone else.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's such a like, I don't know, it's such a shocking name too. Like it makes sense. Like the bats are flyers because they fly. Like that's their whole deal. So it's really interesting and shocking to learn that the humans are named the killers because there's nothing else that makes them stand out more to the other species. They just are killers. It's so evocative, it's so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a straight up child saying it. Like
Yes.
this 7 or 8-year-old would. It's like, oh yeah, humans are killing. That's just so like imagine being humbled by a child. And
right.
I don't know. I feel like if your species name, if you as a species are defined by killing, that's not like a name that you should just, shove that in a drawer somewhere and try to forget about it. That should be a clear indication that you as a species are doing something wrong.
Right? Yeah, the fact that this is coming from Hazard, who kind of like Boots is this, representation of like innocence. Like the fact that he's just revealing this information like it's no big deal and he thinks it's common knowledge and he's surprised that everyone else doesn't already know this. Like it's so powerful that it's coming from this kid who only knows about how commonly used this word is because of his like non-traditional upbringing in the jungle.
Yeah, definitely.
Howard adds that humans don't like the name and their enemies avoid using it because it makes them seem too powerful. Gregor wonders what the humans did to deserve this name, which is something we find out about in Book 5. He's learned by now that the humans aren't always the good guys, but he wonders if they really kill more than any other species. Luxa is upset that Hazard used the word killers, but he says Hamnet used to use it sometimes. He says he did not like being a killer, and Luxa snaps at him to stop saying that. Hazard says he doesn't think the word will ever go away, because most other species still call them that in their own languages. Luxa shoots a look at Temp and says, "Well, that is an interesting piece of news." Temp confirms it's an old word, but he's clearly uncomfortable. Hazard seems to think this should have been common knowledge, but Gregor points out that no humans besides Hazard and Hamnet ever bothered to speak other creatures' languages.
Which is also just so telling.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that Hazard only knows this because he is one of the only Underlanders to ever try and speak other animals' languages. And, like, Luxa and Howard did not know that this is the word for human in a lot of the other creatures' languages. Like, Because Hazard is right. Like, he's acting like this is common knowledge. Why don't you know this? How could you not? Because it is totally something that the Regalians should know. Like, this is basic information. Like, what do the other species call us in their own languages? But they just have absolutely no desire to learn anything about the other animals' languages.
Yeah. And it's like very almost hypocritical of Lexa to like shoot this look at Tep and be like, oh, interesting. Like, so you might have been talking behind our backs this whole time. But it's like, well, if you'd made any effort to know what they were saying, then they wouldn't.
Yeah, Luxa seems upset that, like, why didn't you tell us that you called us this? And it's like, you guys never ask anything about the other languages. This is your own fault for not wanting to learn anything.
Yeah. I think it's also really interesting. I wonder if this wasn't more widely known amongst the Regalians, how many of them would be as upset as Luxa and Howard were here, and how many would like take pride in it. Like, I feel like Solovet is someone who might take pride in it, and in that way, I don't know. It's almost like they should know, but I don't know. I'd be curious to think, would that inspire more people to want to change their ways, or would it just make them double down and be like, yeah, we're the killers, you know?
Right. Yeah, that is such a good point I had not considered. I agree. Solovet would probably be like, yeah, obviously we're the killers. That makes sense. We're the best.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Vicus would probably like have a breakdown.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that Hazard mentions that Hamnet used to call the humans killers, because Hamnet has, personal, up close, like, experience to draw from to say, like, yeah, the humans are killers. That is what they do. So it's really interesting. Like, probably Hamnet didn't know that the humans were called killers in other animals' languages until he went to the jungle. And then the fact that he starts referring to them that way after he learns it is very interesting.
Yeah. I wonder if Hamnet, like, if that's his own translation based off of what he was hearing. Like, I don't know. I guess I'd be interested to know how the killers translates in, like, across the other languages. Like, if it's a sort of one-to-one translation that stays true between, like, the crawlers and the spitters, or if there are, like, slight variations on it. Like, I don't know. I wonder how accurate of a translation it is, or, like, why killers if not murderers, or I don't know. I'm interested in the linguistic choices there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to think of, like, okay, so in Crawler, what's the morphology of the word to kill, and how do you make it into killer and then plural killers? Like, I want to know how they, form their words, and is the word killer, like, a general term that they use for a lot of different things, but then it also kind of just refers to humans, or, like, yeah, I'm interested how exactly the other species have, semantic knowledge about that term.
Yeah, exactly.
Hazard apologizes to Luxa, who hugs him but still looks troubled. The conversation unsettles Gregor and makes him question his own role in the Underland. The narration says, if the humans were known as killers, then what did that make him? Their warrior, their rager, a killer among killers? He wonders if he'll be expected to fight in the upcoming war, and more importantly, kill the Bane. I love this part of where he's like a killer among killers. Like, he doesn't like that the humans are the bad guys, and he doesn't like that they're referred to as killers, but he also understands that he is a human, regardless of the fact that he's an overlander. Like, he is aligned with the humans, and he is worried about what that means for him.
Yeah, and it's like, it's most upsetting because he's not wrong. Like, I mean, he's a 12-year-old boy, and it's, I feel like that is important context. But also, if we're talking about the warrior among humans, like, he's not wrong. I feel like he kind of is like the killer of the killers, and that's just such a horrible role to be forced into when you're a literal child.
Right. Yeah, especially since he hates fighting, but that is what the Regalians really value about him. Like, they are trying to make him a killer of killers. Like, he is the pinnacle of what they stand for, which is a heartbreaking thing to realize about oneself is that you've been kind of put in this role where you're going to be forced to inflict violence and perhaps kill the Bane. In classic Gregor fashion, he decides to put off thinking about everything until later, figuring he can talk to Vicus about the prophecy of time once they're back in Regalia.
And oh boy, we have these.
Yup, I am so excited to get to book 5 because that one just starts right away. There is no, like, exposition or lead up or whatever. It just drops us right into the thick of things, and it's great every time.
Yes, God.
In the morning, the Scorpions help the group figure out their next move. The rats are likely guarding the tunnel entrance back toward Hades Hall, but the Scorpions suggest an alternate route deeper into the Firelands. Luxa doesn't mention her plan to search for the mice, but Gregor can tell she still intends to find them. The Scorpions also mention to be watchful of the currents, but no one is worried about them. Gregor assumes they're the same currents as the ones in the laundry room grate, which he actually kind of likes. Hang in there, Gregor.
Yeah.
Hold that thought.
You've got our big store coming.
Yeah, for real. Before they leave, Luxa has Hazard translate a message to the Scorpions. From now on, the humans and the Scorpions are allies. The Scorpions return the sentiment, and even though their response lacks emotion, Gregor chalks it up to how many different languages are being used. He just considers it a big win that no one died.
I like the line about when he's going through, like, oh yeah, we've got a Scorpion talking in Crawler to a 7-year-old who had just learned Crawler and speaks a mixture of Overland and Underland English. It's like the equivalent of putting something through Google Translate like 5 times that Gregor's like, yeah, no, this might not be the most accurate translation, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah, I love that line too. As they leave, Gregor tells Luxa that Vicus would have loved to see that peaceful resolution. Luxa agrees, but warns that Vicus can trust too easily. She reminds Gregor that when they visited the Spinners, they ended up as prisoners, and they only became allies after Gorger's army slaughtered them. Gregor argues that Vicus's trust allowed that alliance to happen in the first place. Luxa isn't convinced, but acknowledges Gregor's point. Gregor says, "I'm just saying, it's nice when nobody gets killed." Luxa replies, "That is pretty talk for a warrior," and imitates his accent to say, "Remember, it's nice when nobody gets killed."
I want to hear her imitating Gregor's voice.
Right? The audiobook does a really funny job of it.
Remember, it's nice when nobody gets killed.
But, like, I would love to, see a adaptation of this for the screen where with her imitating him. I think that would be very funny.
Yeah. This is just such it's about to develop into even more of a cute Gregor and Luxa moment, but just this little conversation it's so sweet between them.
Yeah. I love that even though they're kind of discussing very intense things like, oh yeah, remember back when the Spinners took us prisoner? Oh, good times. Like, I love how they're joking about it, and especially like how Gregor is pointing out to Luxa, like, Vicus would have loved what you just did. And because I think Luxa gets a lot of feedback from the Regalians and Solovet of, like, violence is our way and we have to always fight. But then on the other hand, she has Vicus and Hamnet to look to as like a model of how to interact with other species. And I love that Gregor is kind of reminding her, like, yes, you also have these other people, like Hamnet's advice, you can follow Hamnet's advice, and like Vicus would be proud of you for doing this way. It's almost like he's reminding her, like, people will approve of you doing the more peaceful thing.
Yeah. And even Luxa being kind of a contrary person who doesn't really, she doesn't really care what the council wants of her. She's kind of very independent and does what she thinks is right. But I feel like it's still very important to know that there is someone out there who knows what she's doing and having that outside support.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, despite their dire situation, Gregor feels strangely happy to be joking around with Luxa. They're far from home, surrounded by enemies, wounded, and facing a coming war. The narration says, maybe it was just the relief of still being alive, or maybe it was something else. ... That
is such a loud ...
For real. I love how Gregor is kind of like not, I mean, he's not like denying his feelings for Luxa. He's pretty much just like noticing that he likes her and being like, okay, yeah, I like Luxa. He's not like pretending to himself to not, which I think is what a lot of like romances do. Like the protagonist remains kind of oblivious to their own feelings. And maybe Gregor's doing like a little bit of that, but
yeah,
overall, I think he's aware of his crush, and yeah, because as they're riding, Luxa is like leaning back against him, and Howard comes by and like gives Gregor a disapproving look. And Gregor thinks that Howard is probably going to give him like another lecture about him liking Luxa. So Gregor is fully like, I know what's happening here. I know that people aren't going to approve of this, but that's what's up.
Yeah, he takes such a practical approach to it. He's like, all right, I like Luxa. What does that mean? Can we ever be in a relationship? Probably not. All right, anyway.
Right, exactly. Yeah, just the fact that he like brushes off this whole thing, and because he thinks like, as soon as we get back to Regalia, my mom is gonna send me home, and that sucks, but that's reality.
Yeah, he's so brave for being a 12-year-old boy with a crush and also being in a war. Like, both of those things are so independently hard. He's doing both. Good for him.
Yup, exactly. As they continue flying, the tunnel changes color from dull gray to shiny black. When they stop at a pool for water, Gregor runs his hand over the smooth floor and says it could be obsidian, which he explains is made from cooling lava from volcanoes. Boots starts sliding around on the smooth ground, excitedly yelling, "Grego, I ice skate!" Hazard wants to try too, but Howard grabs him, saying the last thing he needs is another head injury, which I have to agree with. Gregor asks if the volcanoes are active, and after explaining what that means, Luxa says she doesn't know. No one's ever stayed in the Firelands long enough to study the volcanoes because the air is so bad, which is good foreshadowing for later troubles we're going to have with the bad air and the volcanoes.
Yeah, it's such a very nicely inserted detail that we then sort of gloss over very quickly so we don't think about it too hard. It's very good.
Right? Yeah, Suzanne Collins is very good at that.
Yeah.
I've been noticing it a lot too with like how we were talking about how important it is to know who is on what bat in this book. And just like the fact that like space on the bats is hard to come by, and later that's going to mean that Talia can't ride on Ares because Ripred has to ride on Ares, and that leads to tragedy later.
Yes.
So we're kind of just hinting at all of this trouble with the bats and the bad air, and like we're getting there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the bats sense an unknown creature moving in the area where Boots is headed. Gregor tries to go after her, but he slips and falls. Boots lets out a startled "uh-oh" and drops out of sight. From the dark, they hear her say, "I know you."
Her little uh-oh, like, it's concerning, but it's also so funny to me.
Right?
Uh-oh disappears.
Yeah, like it's kind of terrifying that she just like disappears out of sight, but also I can picture it very perfectly, and it's very comical.
Yeah.
The group rushes forward, and Howard catches Gregor before he falls into the pit in the floor. 20 feet down, Boots is trying to climb the smooth sides of the pit, and next to her, a scrawny rat lies on the ground, panting for air. His front teeth are overgrown and have locked his mouth open, but Gregor can still recognize him by the scar on his face. The chapter ends with Gregor saying, "Ripred, don't move, we're coming."
It's so good.
It's so good. This is definitely one of my favorite scenes, like, after the whole conversation with the Scorpions and Hazard revealing that the humans are called killers, which is definitely like one of my top 5 favorite scenes in the whole series. Just like thematically, it is so rich. But after that, like, the scene that comes up with Rip Red in the pit is also one of my, like, top favorite scenes.
Yeah. Seeing him in such a vulnerable position is just so jarring and almost hard to read. Like, this is Rip Red and he's so lawless. And yeah, I go back to the foreshadowing. Wasn't the thing about how like rats need to gnaw on their teeth so they don't get overgrown? Wasn't that a thing that was mentioned like in book 3 or something? Like, talk about planting that scene early. That's just
Yeah, definitely. It might have even been mentioned earlier, like in book 1 or something, because isn't Rip Red in the first book like gnawing on like a bone or something? And Gregor is like, "Can you stop that?" And Rip Red is like, "Actually, I can't."
Yeah, that's the scene I was thinking of. I thought it was book 3 for some reason, but I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this has been something like planted way in advance of like Suzanne Collins like sets us up with this knowledge and we think, oh, that's just a fun rat fact, but then it has like plot relevance later. It's perfect.
Yeah, and with her, you can almost be certain that it wasn't just a thing she mentioned offhand, and it's like, oh, you know what, I should do something like that. Like I can see her having this, maybe not the exact details of it, but from the beginning, she was like, oh yeah, that's gonna happen.
Yes, yeah, I can totally see her being like, at some point, I am going to pull this out and just like utilize this possibility.
It's Chekhov's overgrown rat teeth.
Yes. Yeah, but this is a great like cliffhanger to end on. It's just like setting up the next step of their quest. Like I would love to just at some point study the plot structure that Suzanne Collins uses throughout these books, because she's so good at like putting one scene after the other and they just like flow into each other so smoothly. And it's like, we had our encounter with the Scorpions, and then we had a little bit of rest time, and now we're about to have another kind of like action-y scene. And she's really good at just kind of like pacing all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like very formulaic without feeling too predictable or forced or anything. It just works so well.
Right. It's really effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love in this chapter how Gregor is further forced to confront how the humans have like a history of violence and how he is aligned with them, and just like kind of hammering home the point that like diplomacy can prevent the conflict, like with the Scorpions. Like the alliance that they have with the Scorpions, it doesn't come back in like the 5th book or anything, but it's nice to set that up as like a possibility, especially for Luxa as the future queen. Like this is a mini version of what she does at the end of the 5th book to achieve peace.
Yeah, which is another moment where Gregor, like when they go to see Vicus and he's like, oh, wait till you hear what Luxa did. Like really like setting her up for some praise and like that recognition from someone who's like, oh, you did a good job.
That's right. I forgot about that. He does say the same thing of like, Vicus is gonna love that. Yeah.
I love how even with the sort of thematic shift of like communication and taking a path other than violence, even as that shift is happening, they never go to like an unrealistic solution. Like when they find out what's really happening with the Nibblers, it's not like, oh, let's talk this out with the rats. Like they still acknowledge like there's something really sinister happening here and we need to do whatever it takes to stop it. But then like, you know, there's what Luxa does at the end of book 5 and like all these sort of smaller choices here and there when they're able to make them, where it's like, okay, but we can still have this much needed fight while still also working to change things. And I just think it's so impressive that like Suzanne Collins doesn't just pick one over the other.
Right, she balances it so well, especially like in the past few chapters. Gregor and Luxa have been having that conversation, that debate, like very head on. Like, Gregor is very much like, fighting is bad, Luxa, and Luxa is like, well, what do you suggest we do, because something terrible is happening and we need to act about it. And it's, yeah, Collins is just like a genius at making us see both sides and presenting all of these different points, but then all these different points coexist, but it still leads up to this ending in book 5 where everything that we've learned kind of comes to a head. It's like Luxa's final test. It's like her final exam.
Yeah, it's just so good. This book is so good.
I know, right? I'm glad that you think that this one is your favorite now, because it is my favorite, and I love every single scene in it. Every single scene is iconic.
Yeah. I mean, I reread the series over the summer. That was my most recent reread, and I was like, yeah, no, I think this one takes the cake for me.
Mm-hmm. Did you have anything else that we didn't get to about these chapters?
I had a very silly thought.
Let's hear it.
Just when Gregor like identified the obsidian, that's something that like he probably knows from his dad being a scientist, just like something he learned at school. But if these books were written more recently, he definitely would have known that from Minecraft. And I just think that's really funny.
Oh my god. You are so right, actually. Oh man, Gregor would love Minecraft.
Gregor would love Minecraft.
Oh, that's so real.
Gregor grows up to create like a 1-to-1 recreation of the Underland in Minecraft, and everyone's like, wow, this is so creative. Where'd you come up with this?
Why hasn't someone else done that in real life yet?
I thought about attempting it, and then I realized how much of a time investment it would be, and I was like, I'm gonna let someone else do this, but I don't know. Yeah.
Someone should set up a server and we can all like work on it together.
Yes, oh my gosh, that would be so cool.
If anyone out there knows anything about setting up Minecraft servers, let us know.
I fear I am familiar with the process. I may have to take initiative.
That'd be so fun. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Audie.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Do you have anything you want to plug at the end here?
I don't think so. I think it was kind of covered in the last episode, the zine that's in process right now, the Underland zine. I'm a part of it. I'm very excited for it, so everyone should look at it.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. I'm definitely gonna reblog something about that from the zine Tumblr. But until then, next episode we'll cover chapters 19 and 20. Don't forget to follow, rate, and comment on the podcast wherever you're listening. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, fly you high!
Fly you high!